Good evening, America. My name is Blake, and this is the first narrated content that I have ever made for my YouTube channel. If you look through my videos, they seem to have gotten a bit of interest. I picked up a big block Chevy, a Generation 6 big block Chevy, along with 4L80E and the wiring harness and computer system, and I installed it into my 84 Monte Carlo Super Sport. I really enjoyed the process of that swap. I enjoyed learning the ins and outs of the wiring and the harness, and it really was very informative. So I was inspired to build that car because of some of Richard Holdner's videos. I really enjoy watching all of his content. I've been a fan of his for a really long time. He was at, I can't remember if it was Hot Rod or CarCraft, but I think I had subscriptions to basically all of the Peterson publications in the late 90s, early 2000s. I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of those CarCraft, Chevy High Performance, Hot Rod. They were all really great magazines. And I noticed that Richard, originally Richard did the Speed Secrets, and those seems to be all sponsored videos. And then he just started making his own videos. But the videos that really caught my eye specifically were the Gen 6 big block videos. So I don't know why. If you ask any of my friends or loved ones, they will tell you that I enjoy doing things the hard way and facing difficulty. So unfortunately, you're not going to see a whole lot of LS1 content on this channel. I don't have any. What I do have is 3 Generation 6 big blocks, and I have 2 project cars, which I will introduce you to and give you tours of in another video. One of them is a 1984 Monte Carlo Super Sport that, of course, you can see video of on this channel. It was running. I daily drove it for 3 months until we got the first rains in Florida. They can be really terrible, and unfortunately the car was lowered about 3 or 4 inches in the front, 2.5 to 3 inches in the rear, and I was navigating what I thought was a puddle on my way to work. It turned out to be a minor water hazard, and unfortunately the motor ended up taking a drink, and the engine hydrolocked so badly that I couldn't even spin the engine backwards. I've seen plenty of hydrolocked motors in my day. That was certainly the worst one. The block was not even salvageable. So I've found that it is actually better to buy the entire vehicle. It's really easy to find them on Facebook Marketplace. Craigslist is still a thing. Don't forget about Craigslist. I still find good deals on there all the time. But the big block Chevys, the best of the big block Chevys, in my opinion, were the Gen 6s. The Gen 7s had better factory stuff on them. We can talk about that in a different video. I will talk about that in a different video because they definitely did some very cool things for the big block in Generation 7, but Generation 6 is my favorite. You get factory 4-bolt mains, they're incredibly beefy. You get a factory roller cam with the factory roller setup looks almost identical to the small block roller setup, and you end up with the spider link and the I forget what they're called, but they're basically like lifter hold downs or lifter guides, and they sit underneath the spider and make sure that the roller lifters continue to roll up and down straight. The reason for those is if the roller lifter turns, you end up gouging the camshaft and wiping out a cam lobe, and carnage ensues. But you get the generation, you get the roller cam, and you get these nice big oval port. These are big ovals. You get nice big oval port cylinder heads. A lot of people poo-poo these. These are the L29 cylinder heads. They have the ski jump. They flow about, I want to say the flow numbers from the factory. I see different numbers all over the place, but I've seen people flow these things as low as 235 CFMs. I've seen as high as 260 CFMs, which would really be tremendous. You're really doing something at 260 CFMs. I feel like it probably falls somewhere in the middle. I think that you would be hard pressed with the stock heads without doing anything to them at all. I think you would be hard pressed to hit 500 horsepower, but you can make a ton of torque. So this was an engine that came out of a 1999 GMC C2500. I pulled everything. I got the engine, the transmission, the wiring harness, the torque converter, and I basically am going to rebuild this thing from scratch. I know Richard likes to take these motors and just, I don't know how he does it. He takes these motors out of a junkyard. You know, he'll put a socket on the harmonic balancer pulley, and if it spins a half a rotation, it's good enough for him, and he throws these things on the dyno and cranks on them. That has not been my experience with junkyard engines. My experience, the last time I pulled an engine from the wrecking yard, it seemed healthy. I think I got 400 or 500 miles out of it, and then it spun, and I was very kind to it, which once you get to know me, you'll find that that's very rare. I am not kind to automobiles, drivetrains, and very, very hard on them. But I was very kind to this one while I was getting the car sorted out, and it spun a rod bearing on me, which was extremely aggravating at the time. So this one is a very minor rebuild. This I would liken to a high school shop rebuild. I didn't do any machine work to the block. I didn't hot tank anything. I honed the cylinders. I'll take you through some of that stuff later. I hung the cylinders, I put new main and rod bearings in it. I did buy quality bearings because the difference between an extremely budget bearing and a very nice bearing was maybe $20. And then, so we're gonna redo the bearings, the seals, all the gaskets. I'm doing the freeze plugs because they're easy. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm going to do the camshaft swap that Richard did in a couple of the Gen 6 Speed Secrets videos. So I have a Comp Cams Extreme Marine. It is 547 lift, which is pretty much the max lift you can run on these heads without running into two different types of clearance issues, piston to valve clearance issues, and then also valve guide, valve seal issues. So I thought an interesting thing today would be to show you how to take a bare head. This is an L29 head broken down all the way. You'll see there's absolutely nothing in this head. It's been cleaned with degreaser and a wire brush and some lint-free cloths and the hose. This is as barnyard basic as it gets, but I think that once we put this back together, I did cheat a little bit. I'm going to show you how to measure your installed height, your valve spring installed height, because it's important that you get things correct. If I recall correctly, I think that Richard used some Comp Cams. I want to say he used Comp Cams Beehive 1226 springs. I actually used the Pack Racing. I did a fair amount of internet research. It's very easy to go down rabbit holes, but what I discovered was that Pack actually used to manufacture the springs for Comp, and then Comp basically kept the spec and manufactures their own now, which is very common. It happens all the time. Pack makes excellent racing products. I've used their stuff in the past, and if you look, this is their 1220 Beehive spring. So it's almost identical to the spring, you see, and the reason they call them Beehive is if you look, they're actually much smaller at the top than they are at the bottom. So one of the things that allows you to do is run a smaller retainer. Now this is another area where my build is going to differ a little bit from Richard's. If you ask anybody who has a big block Chevy or races big block Chevys or goes for big power, they'll all tell you the biggest weakness of the big block Chevy is valve train instability. These things are very big. I'll show you. This is an intake valve here. This is one of the intake valves, and I think I have I actually have a stock Gen 2 LT1194 intake valve. So if I can find that quickly, I will show you just how much bigger big block valves are. But they're very heavy, and so you get a lot of valve spring harmonic. Valve float is always an issue, and these beehive springs are supposed to cure all that. But I thought I would take things a step further and add these titanium retainers. So these are made by Comp Cams. They're titanium retainers, and I combine them with 10-degree locks. I have the locks here. This is the correct part number. This is the correct part number. I'll put the part numbers to all of this because, you know, between production variants and what you read on the internet, even on Richard's video, bless his heart, I think he got a couple of the part numbers wrong, so I ordered basically that entire kit, and then it turned out that one of the part numbers was off by like one number, so I had to send it back. As far as where I get my parts from, I use either Summit or Jegs. I find their pricing is almost identical. I find Summit's shipping and website, I don't know what's going on. I feel terrible saying this, but Summit's website, for me personally, is just much easier to navigate than Jegs' website. You can cross-reference your searches by engine family and, you know, almost anything you can think of. I've got to believe that you can do the same thing on Jegs' website. I just, for the life of me, I just do not navigate as well. Something that is interesting to note is that in these COVID times of slow shipping and everybody's working from home, Jegs is way faster. Their customer service is currently way better. It is way better. I don't have anything bad to say about Summit except that I've waited on the phone as long as 3.5, 4 hours. And then there was, I did have a whole debacle with one set of engine parts I ordered. I won't get into that. Jegs, you can get somebody on the phone right away. They fix things. I fall into the classic trap with my projects of tearing the whole car apart and doing everything at the same time. Don't do that. I hope that one thing that comes out of this channel is that I learn to be a better project car guy, because at the same time I'm working on this engine build, I've got, I'll take you on a tour of this horrifyingly small garage, but I've got body parts in here, I've got driveline parts in here, I've got interior parts in here. Don't be like me, kids, do one thing at a time. So with that said, if I do this channel correctly, there will be plenty of other videos so I can address those things. Let's build this head. So the first thing we're going to need, and like I said, this is a very shade tree. Not everybody has access to, I forget what that awesome dyno, oh, Westtech, oh man, Westtech. I drool over Westtech's campus. I've been watching them for a long time too. Steve Brule is like an evil genius. Anyway, so intake valve, exhaust valve. They're typically pretty easy to identify, especially in pushrod engines, because one is much larger than the other. You can see the diameters of the valves there. So let's pop this bad boy up. Yep. So the first thing we're going to do is install our valve. Now that is the forwardmost cylinder valve. Let's see, and when I put this on the block, that would be this one. All right, so we are going to work on this cylinder first. So make sure you got a good view of that. As you can see, we haven't had these heads decked or anything. we took a razor blade, we scraped the surface, and then we're basically going from there. So since this is the one we're going to be working on, we need to find a way to keep the valves up. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do it. The way Richard did it in his video was he had the head installed. Actually, he wasn't even doing a rebuild. So he just ran an air pressure hose with an adapter, with a spark plug adapter, and he runs compressed air into the cylinders, and the compressed air holds the valves up while he removes the keepers and the retainers and all that stuff. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so if you are tearing the whole engine apart and you're doing this on a bench, you can do it this way. So what I usually do, you can use almost anything. All we have to do is make sure that the valve stems are up so that we can manipulate them and use them. So, like for instance, these are used shop rags. I'm just going to stick them in the combustion chamber, and the weight of the cylinder head will compress this to the correct size. So when we flip it over, they're heavy. Boy, are iron big block cylinder heads heavy. All right. Well, that wasn't too bad. Oh, broke my temperature sensor. Good thing I wasn't using that anyway. All right, so can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. All right, so these are the valve stems. So the first thing we need to do, this is a valve spring height micrometer, and it's a pretty interesting tool. As you spin it, if you look closely, you can see that there are actually numbers on it. So you need to make sure you order the correct one. I got this one from Jegs, and there are two for different heights. These springs have an installed height, they tell you, of 1.88. Somebody thought it would be funny to put the barcode over this, but I was able to discern enough of the spec there that I could figure it out. And you know, it's like I said, the installed height is the same height as you find on the comp springs. So our installed spring height is going to be 1.880. So to figure out where we're at, we're going to put our micrometer over the valve. Oh, and before I do that, the rotator eliminators. Big Black Chevy heads had these weird valve spring rotator deals in them. I'm trying to think if I have any nearby. I don't see any. They're absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why they would use them. I've read that the GM engineers did them for valve spring heat protection. I don't know why they did it, but they come apart. They can't take a lot of spring pressure. So you get these rotator eliminators, and they go right where the valve spring rotators were. And the part number for those is 4698-8. So and the -8 just tells you how many are in the package. So if you just need one, if you're replacing stuff, it's 4698. So I've taken two of the rotator eliminators. They bring your spring height up 3/100ths? Yeah, 3/100ths of an inch. So that gets factored in. These are super simple to install. You just drop them on. Right. And they're on. This particular valve guide had some casting flash on it that made it a little bit more difficult, but with a little bit of effort, I was able to just force it down. So now we have our rotator eliminators, and now we can figure out our installed height. So I always start with this thing contracted all the way at its shortest point, and then I bring it around so that I can see the zero. Let's see, I think this particular one starts at 1.80. tell you right now. Yep, this one, the starting height is 1.8. So we are going to install our retainer, our titanium retainer, and then we're going to put our valve locks These are very simple. They have a groove in them, and the groove fits over the valve. So let me grab one of these for illustration purposes. This is what we're trying to do here. If you look, you see that the valve has a little groove in it, and there is a corresponding lip. My lighting isn't the greatest, but you're going to take the lip, and it sits right in the valve groove, like that. So if you look, if you do this correctly and don't install them upside down like I just did, they make a very positive stop. So I'm going to take this lock and tuck it down inside the retainer. Hopefully there's enough clearance there that I can get it. And it looks like there is. Yeah, there we go. 1/2, 2/2. All right. And then I pull up so that I keep it together as a assembled unit. And you can see perfect valve retainage. So let's measure this now. We'll start by unscrewing our tool. There is 0. All right, I need it. I need a flashlight or better lighting in my garage. But this, according to the micrometer, when I look at the 0 mark, this valve installed height with the retainer and the lock is exactly 2 inches. So because we need an installed height of 1.880, we have to shim the valve spring to get us to that exact number. So that's where these come in. These are ComCam's valve shims. I ordered, let's see, I ordered these valve spring shims. This is 4743. They fit the Gen 6 spring pockets, and I've placed these underneath the rotator eliminators. I think that's a better way to do it. The rotator eliminators have a lip on them that act as a retainer for the valve spring, so that's why I shim underneath them instead of shimming inside, in case you're wondering. So I got the correctly sized valve spring shims in 3 different measurements: 0.060, 0.030, and 0.015. So let's see, we have an installed height of 2.0, we need 1.880. So that means that we need to come up with 0.12. So that means this one, all we have to do to set this one's installed height is run 2 0.060 shims, which I happen to have right here. Perfect. So I will tell you that I've already done one of these heads. I'll show you the completed head as soon as I'm done doing the intake and the exhaust. The valve spring installed heights were wildly different from cylinder to cylinder. I have no idea why. To my naked eye, the valve stem lengths all appeared to be identical. The valve, again, to my naked eye, the valve seats and the heads all appeared to be in the correct spot. And we are dealing with hundredths and thousandths of clearance, so I chalk that up to manufacturing tolerances. But I did need a variety of different types of shims for the other head. So, all right, so now we know what our shim size is, so we can take our tool off. And let's see, I'm gonna pull this rotator eliminator, which is giving me a hard time, of course, because I'm doing this on video. Let's see if I have a tool that might help us out with that. What type of tool do you think would be helpful for this? I'm looking for needle nose pliers. How about that? All right, so we will pull up our, see how easy that was? Pull our rotator eliminator up. We're going to take our 0.060 valve spring shims. We're going to place them over the valve guide. Going to put our rotator eliminator back in. And let's see, there's one other thing we have to do that we can't forget, because if you forget, you're going to have to undo everything and take it back off. And that thing is your valve seal. Your valve seal goes on right over your valve guides. So you literally just take this little guy. These are pretty interesting valve seals. I like them. They look like they're going to work really well. They have like a neoprene or like a urethane seal right at the end, and the rest of it's just pretty much ABS plastic. So it'll be nice and tough. And what I like about it is, again, we mentioned production tolerances. The general rule of thought is that you can run up to 0.547, 0.578-ish inches of lift. I've heard about people running into valve seal to retainer clearance issues. You know, it lifts in between that, but I think that it's going to be okay. So the name of this engine is Stopgap. This is just a temporary motor that I'm building to get my Monte Carlo back on the road as soon as possible. I am actually building another motor for it that is getting the full Monte, if you will. Machine work, forged everything, studded mains, studded heads, Edelbrock heads, and that should be a very fun project. So anyway, like I said, we've got our valve spring on. This is where things get difficult. So knowing what I know, I'm going to take, I don't even know if this is going to work. This is my first time using this method. Yep. Well, I'm going to take this C-clamp and I'm going to clamp the head down to my working surface here. Hopefully this will give me enough leverage to manhandle this on here, because we're about to get into some very high pressures in some very small places. So yeah, that feels like it'll break. This is the valve spring compressor I elected to go with. I got it off of Amazon, and it's the same manufacturer as the tools that you rent from AutoZone. I found that very interesting. A lot of the AutoZone rental tools are available on Amazon. So, you know, I use AutoZone rental tools from time to time. I've never really had a problem, although to the extent that I said that, if a tool happens to break, they're always very good about taking it back. I really love the AutoZone rental program. So, it's valve spring time. I'm going to take our Beehive valve spring, install it, and you're going to need a bolt. The bolt does not come with this. I found a bolt. I can't remember what this is. This looks like it might have been an exhaust manifold bolt off of a different project, but whatever it fit, it happened to fit the same thread. Oh, this actually might be a rocker bolt. Another interesting feature that the Gen 6 heads have is that they have non-adjustable valve train like the LS motors. So you don't have to worry about adjusting the valve and You know, do I take it past 0 lash and then do 2 full turns? Do I do 1 full turn? Do I do everything right and then all of my push rods bend and I have no idea why? You don't have to worry about that. You just bolt them down, torque them to 55 foot-pounds, and your valve train is adjusted. It's set. So here we go. This is one of the hardest parts because you got to get this bolt going in here. Oh, this one's not too bad. Oh, did I speak too soon? Okay, spoke too soon. Let's see what size that is. Save some time, just keep my tools right here. I want to say, yeah, I hope that's not a 9/16 because that's the only one that's missing. Isn't that how it always works? It is a 9/16, so I will just use the long 9/16. Put that over there. All right. All right, so you got to run this bolt down far enough so that when you crank down or up, in this case, up on this lever, you can get enough action, you can get enough leverage to push the spring down far enough. You also, I don't know if you can see this, but you have to keep an eye on the orientation of the spring because you also need room to work. So this is pretty difficult, but what you have to do is while you're if you don't have a helper, I normally have the most excellent shop assistant ever. I can't wait to introduce you to him. He's amazing. He's just even better at housework, but he's like the best. He's like, I refer to him as the Midwestern Wizard, but I know Wizard is already taken. But I was calling him that before there